So I've been looking at this from trying to do a little bit of who is Floyd Roland, what his values are, and how he thinks he can try to help put that back in the programs we deliver, the policies we develop. And looking at, from a territorial perspective, our environment, because this is our land, the economy, which right now great resources are coming out of our land, and our people, who should be benefiting from any development that happens here in this land. I won't go into a biography of day by day, once upon a time, long time ago, but I will start in laying down maybe some of the context of who I am and the values that I hold, and maybe why I've become the person I am. Quite simply, I am an Inuvialuit. I'm a Northerner, and I'm a Canadian. I was born at the Inuvik General Hospital in 1961. After being just discharged, spent the first few days of my life in a tent on the shores of the East Branch of the Mackenzie River with my birth mother and grandmother. I was adopted at 5 days old to David and Olga Roland. You can tell this man, his family, has had a huge impact on my life. You know, with the strength of you, Dad, I will move forward. In his words, he would say to those listening, my wife went to Inuvik to get some supplies. When the bombardier returned that evening, he thought that he had better meet her just in case she had something heavy to carry home. When meeting her at the bombardier shack, she was indeed carrying a bundle, and to his surprise, it was a little baby boy. Now I will spare you the rest of the day by day. See, I believe it is our past that helps define what our present, and more importantly, what our future may hold. To move ahead, we must know where we have come from. We must build on the foundation that was laid by our parents and grandparents, the foundation which is all-encompassing. It was about the values of everyday life. The man I call Dad grew up in conditions that were much harsher than our generation has experienced. Whether it was building a snow house every evening for himself and his wife and his first child while traveling from the Sax Harbor area to the Mackenzie Delta, or building his first house by hand out of green trees, or pulling a tarp over himself on the tundra as he watched over the reindeer herd. My father, like his father, walked this land, harvested from this land, and now rests in this land. They helped set the foundation. Now it is our turn to build a stronger foundation, a stronger North. If I'm fortunate enough to have the confidence of members of the Assembly to get the seat of Premier, that doesn't mean it's going to be a rosy ride for everybody in the territories, because I think we have to challenge our own people. We have to challenge the bureaucracy within the government. We have to challenge our own leaders in our communities. And we have to challenge our own families. Nobody likes that when you're in their face. But it has to be done. As a young boy, I traveled on many hunting trips with my dad and his friends. In the spring, we trapped muskrats. In the summer, we went whaling and fishing. In the fall, we hunted caribou and geese. You knew when they were getting ready to go out, the grub boxes being packed, they were getting supplies ready. So you're sort of eager, okay, I'll get my stuff together, make sure I got warm socks, extra pants, a parka, things like that. And then I think he saw me sort of getting ready, and that's when he told me, my boy, you can't come with me this time. And when I asked him why I couldn't come with him, he said to me, he said, my boy, I want you to get a good education. He could see that down the road, his lifestyle wasn't going to be enough. How do we practice tough love? It's hard to say no to people, especially your own family. But sometimes that's what's needed. Much like my dad told me, my boy, I can't take you this time. You have to get a good education. Maybe it's because I've been in the trades of fixing things as a mechanic. I talk about having the right tools to get the job done. If we can get the right tools, we can help people. It's much like I can go there for you and I can read it to you and I can tell you how it needs to be done. But wouldn't it be better for me to help you to learn to read it so that you know what any piece of paper tells now? You can, knowledge is power, as we hear so often. So giving the right tools to people. Society has changed in such a way, and I think it would only be fair to even term it as in almost a drastic way. The pendulum has swung from one far end to another. And I go back to the conditions people lived in back then. When no meant no, when our parents said no to us, we stopped in our tracks. When you went to school, and if you got in trouble at school, you were going to get in trouble at home. To a society today where your children tell you as a parent what you can do. To when a student, a counselor in a school phones a parent at home and hears profanity come over the phone. We've gone from one side way to the other side where a child now tells you, you can't do this. I can make a phone call, or I can do this. And all for the right reason in a sense, but how far did we swing as a society where now children were taking their parents to court because they wanted to be divorced from the family? Where's that coming from? And society taking that and running with it. Where's the common sense here?
I declare that you have elected Mr. Floyd Roland as your Premier-elect.
It's a humbling experience to have the support of the members here and throughout the territories. I think we have a challenge to represent the people to the best of our abilities. And I truly believe, as members of the 16th Legislative Assembly, working together and dealing with the issues that are before us, we can truly lay a solid foundation for our children and our grandchildren to come. It's by working together and looking to the people who have put us here. I really believe the Northwest Territories is ready to make the next step in the development of the North. We definitely need to take an approach that would see the North taking a more prominent role. How aggressive do we need to be? Well, I think we need to first and foremost see what they mean and what deliverables might come out of the throne speech. There's some prominent recognition of the North in that area, but what does it really mean? Now, yesterday we heard from the throne speech delivered in Ottawa, which once again mentioned the North prominently. The message, we heard that message and what it had to offer or state about what the North may hold. I think we need to send our message back. One that says we're ready, and we can do our part. Not have someone make those decisions for us in Ottawa. We can help Canada build on Arctic sovereignty. We live here. We can help Canada become a stronger economy within the world by working with our people and the resources this land holds. But we as Northerners need to benefit. Let us help you, Canada, in making our national anthem a reality by making this land the true North, strong and free. As you can tell, I'm passionate about the people I represent and the land they call home. Like the start of a hunting season, there are animals in abundance. A successful hunt will depend on skillful hunters using the right equipment at the right time and place. Now and I'm using a northern analogy. We've all heard about getting a piece of the pie or growing the pie bigger. Here's what I think about it in a northern sort of analogy. The federal government holds the rifle for the hunt, and they hold most of the regulatory authority in the NWT, and they gain most directly from the development of our resources. The GNWT has the ammunition for the gun. We have some regulatory authority and gain some benefits from development. Aboriginal groups and governments have traditional knowledge to bring the hunters to the animals. They have some authority as well within their land claim and traditional areas and gain some benefits from development. Only by working together can we make the hunt successful. If there is only debate and discussion and disagreement, the people will go hungry. We will continue to rely on the monthly income support check that many talk about. I believe it is time to move ahead. Like our elders who prepared for the hunt, we cannot let ourselves continue with more talk. They knew that even if the weather was not the best, that they had to begin to move or lose another opportunity to provide the people with good food. It is time to move ahead for the good of all Northerners.
I sometimes think about the first people who came off the plains in Ottawa, or a southern jurisdiction who came up north to a small community, to saw the conditions people were living in and thought to themselves, this is absolutely brutal. This is a nomadic way. We've got to help these people. And I think, and now, at one time I had sort of my own perspective, but now being in here and sort of watching the whole system work, I look and say, okay, did we really help the people? Because, and I only go by my father's example and friends that he grew up with, the guys like Victor Allen and Inuvik and others, that grew up, Sam Lenny, Edward Lenny. You talk to those guys and they'll tell you those old stories of how they lived. My dad built his own home out of green trees. And to hear him tell the story all by himself with a little bit of help from my mom, cutting down green trees and building this house. And he sometimes, he'd tell the story and then he'd pause for a bit and he'd sort of think to himself and then he'd think out loud. He says, I sometimes wonder how I did it. And he said, that was the coldest winter I ever spent because of green trees. He could never heat up the house. The next winter, the logs dried out a bit and they became more of an insulator, not a block of ice. But you look at those conditions and what they had to live through. If you wanted a house, you built your house. If you wanted some food, you went to get your food. Now, people today would say, are you advocating going back to the land? I would say, you know what, there's still a lot of people who can go live on the land and survive. But we have a lot of our young generation today, if we put them out on the land, wouldn't survive a winter. That's a sad fact and a reality. Hence, I mean, you look at these programs and say, did we as government, did the government of the past actually help people? And the more I think about it and sort of put the pieces together, we took an independent people who were able to work on their own, survive on their own for generations in the harshest climate in the world. And we've made it so that now they come to a government office and say, give me some help. When you look at it, what have we done for the people? Let us give you a good education. But at the same time, we forgot about the education they were receiving as a people already. We introduced foreign language, we introduced foreign concepts. And that's the context I weigh things in. We're still a young territory. I tell people we've just come from the fur industry, or the fur trading era, into the Industrial Revolution within a matter of 2 generations, where the rest of Canada had a couple of 100 years. And we've done this now. We've compressed that whole sort of where the rest of Canada and Europe have had a chance to sort of develop, we've compressed it in a matter of 2 generations to say, well, now you're part of a wage economy, and this is how you need to live. That has been such a shock to people. For example, when the oil companies first came up north, most of the people who worked up in those camps, local people, were the laborers, the camp attendants, the kitchen helpers. We cleaned the floors. Nowadays, we own the business. The Inuvialuit organization, for example, has been an example to a lot of organizations in this country as well as abroad to say, wow, this co-management organization you look at, wildlife side of things, just the ability to get in business. Because we do have to come up with a balance. As much as we want to keep our land pristine and forever, without the ability to have an economy, we won't even be able to manage that at some point. So you look at that side of it and you say, how do we come up with this balance? Being acclaimed for me is a vote of confidence. It was nice to be at home and to know that people supported me in this way again. Representing the community, the same community for 3 terms, up to this last election and then now the 4th term, you tend to hear the same sort of themes coming out. They change in sort of order of importance. But there's sort of the core areas that come to the forefront on a regular basis. Day-to-day issues, income support, housing, education, and the quality of education, and then your healthcare services. A little bit of environment from time to time, or the economy in the communities. Day-to-day issues are the ones that come up. As much as sometimes at the table at the Legislative Assembly we talk about territorial issues, the relationship we have with other organizations in the territory or other territories, Nunavut and the Yukon, or provinces and the federal government. I remember Vince Steen once put it, only as he could put it, but I thought about it and it really stuck with me. And we just gone through a fair bit of work. The previous assembly, 12th Assembly, had the Constitutional Development Steering Committee. They'd gone through quite an in-depth work in large forums, pulling stuff together about the Constitution of the Northwest Territories. We carried on, I believe, as the Constitutional Working Group in the 13th Assembly, trying to bring the rest of that information to a point where we can say now to the people of the territories, what do you think? Here's an option. So we actually, there's a launch in the Great Hall with a number of options, and one of those would have seen 2 houses, one for the public government and one for Aboriginal governments. And it seemed as fast as we launched it, it disappeared. And I remember him in the House after we launched it. He made this comment, and he said, "This paper is of great significance at this table." He said, "But to the people I represent in my constituency, this paper is of little value on their kitchen table." And that really, just to me, just sort of, wow, you know, how we talk about these big sort of ideas and governance structures, but the people in our communities, they're worried about bread and butter issues, as the way he put it. And that, I remember thinking, like, I sat across, I was watching him, listening to him, thinking, wow. Wow. Did he ever hit it? I see the job as a premier as multifaceted in the sense of meeting, trying to get the government to meet the needs of the people on a day-to-day basis. 2, to instill some confidence, the fact that we can make the right decisions in the Northwest Territories to get a balanced economy going. And 3, letting the federal government know we have come of age in the Northwest Territories, that we can now make decisions for ourselves. And sometimes, all of those together, we have to challenge our own people, we have to challenge industry, and we have to challenge the federal government to say, we have come of age, and we are going to make some of these decisions, and we can either work together, or we're going to do what we can from a northern perspective. This is home. My father walked the land here, he harvested the land, and he's buried here. This is home. And I value my home. And I want to leave behind something my children can look back on, and they can tell their children and their grandchildren, we've got this today because we've had people who cared enough to make the right decisions, to stand and fight sometimes for what they believe in. I think that's really important when you become a member. The first term you have is to set up your network of people you talk to, who you get advice from. You don't always go to the same people on the same issues. There's a number of elders you stop in and visit and talk to, and sometimes just go have a coffee and how you doing. Some elders, they'll give you their political insight into things. You go talk to some of the youth and students about issues. Friends of my children sometimes, they'll pop over and ask, hey, what do you think about this? Because if it's a young person issue. The interagency group is a good source of material when they have their meetings and staying in contact with them, for example. So you, as I see it, Inuvik is about the people. And again, whether you're an elder, a youth, employed, unemployed, work for government, work for private, have your say, and we'll do the best we can. And sometimes you just have to go back and tell people, I'm sorry, but we just can't do that. That does not fit with the policy. And some people are not happy, but they respect the fact that you came back. One of the things I said earlier is it doesn't matter. Good news or bad news, I'm coming back home.
Thank you, Mayor Lindsay, for your getting this organized. Thank you very much to the community. And we've got some work to do in the 16th Legislative Assembly, but we're going to count on the support of all people in the territories. Help us get it done. Thank you very much.